world champion.
Hello and welcome to this week's Formula One Grand Prix and a full review of events in the Canadian Grand Prix, round 6 of the FIA Formula One World Championship on the Gilles Villeneuve circuit in Montreal. We'll see how John Alesi came to take his first ever victory on his 31st birthday in Ferrari number 27, the car and number so associated with the man whose name was given to the track on Ile Notre Dame. We'll also report on the achievements of the Jordan Peugeot team, with second and third places to Barrichello and Irvine, and the best results of the season so far for Olivier Panis and Ligier. But we'll start the programme with a review of qualifying and how Michael Schumacher came to take the 100th pole position for a Renault-powered car in Grand Prix racing. Was the venue for the only Formula One visit to North America this year, but for the only French team at the moment a change was in the air. The team announced on Thursday that Cesare Fiorio, the team manager, would be leaving after the French Grand Prix. With Tom Walkinshaw in charge at Ligier these days, perhaps a case of too many chiefs. Meanwhile, it was confirmed that Martin Brundle will be driving in Manicourt and Silverstone. Well, on with the first qualifying session, and David Coulthard was one of the first to set the initial pace. Glorious weather greeting the competitors for the Friday qualifying session. And David Coulthard back at the track where he finished in 5th position in 1994. Well, Martin Brundle had an early spin after just 2 laps, ended up 15th on the provisional grid. Gerhard Berger going a little better, even though he'd only managed to complete 3 laps in the free practice in the morning before the engine had cried enough. Schumacher had been fastest in that free practice session, but second fastest to him had been John Alesi in the other Ferrari. He'd been 3/10 off Schumacher in the morning and was certainly out to try and take pole position in Canada. Third places in 1992 and 1994, driving for Ferrari for Alesi at this circuit, but hoping to go a little better than that this year. John Alesi then going fastest at this point in the qualifying session. And what of the man lying second in the World Championship, a man who had a disappointing run at Monaco but still finishing in second place, Damon Hill. Well, he spun in the free practice session, ended up third fastest, but the worrying aspect for Hill was that he was over 1 second away from Michael Schumacher in that free practice. Indeed, throughout most of the qualifying session he was struggling to really get on the pace, but he would put in a very quick lap right at the end.
It's not that good. I mean, the circuit is very, very difficult to set the car up for, and it's very difficult to find a direction in which to go. At least we are finding it difficult to find a direction. No, don't know.
Eddie Irvine, 6th fastest in this first qualifying session, and Rubens Barrichello, 8th, had a broken electrical wire which cost him some time. But Michael Schumacher was in dominant form once again, and in fact he set 4 laps that were faster than anybody else. His advantage at the end of the qualifying session was over 0.3 of a second. And Schumacher, with an excellent record in Montreal, he'd been on the podium on every visit to the circuit so far in his career, was looking ominously strong. John Alesi, his final run was affected by an electrical problem. Didn't get a chance to use his third set of tyres as much as he wanted to, ended up 4th. And Gerhard Berger, well, he found the Ferrari somewhat nervous and difficult to drive, and also missed out on a final lap chance with a problem with the refuelling equipment. Ukio Katayama had a spin in Mika Salo's car after the engine in his own had blown up early in the session. So Schumacher ended that first qualifying session fastest from Damon Hill and Gerhard Berger, with Jean Alesi in 4th and Coulthard down in 5th place. It was something that Coulthard wanted to do something about very quickly come the second qualifying session, and indeed he moved up into 3rd position.
No, that's true, but 3rd is definitely a lot better, starting in front of the Ferraris. I didn't want to start behind them, and hopefully if I can make a good start, then I can maybe make a place or two at the start.
Coulthard, one of the few to improve on his time. Ukio Katayama having a fairly major spin, but thankfully getting away with it. This remarkable 360-degree spin. The same place that Rubens Barrichello had damaged his Jordan. Well, he wasn't the only one spinning. Reigning world champion Schumacher going off, and caused by dirt on the tyres from a previous corner. He wasn't the only one spinning either, but his spins were causing problems for others.
Schumacher ruined my first run because he spun off, so I lost 4/10 in T1. And I just tried for another lap, and I ran a bit wide, get into the 3rd corner, and then lost the back end coming out of it, and spun round, and that was that. Lost the engine, and end of story.
Mika Salo also had a spin on his very last lap to try and improve on his performance. He ended up the session in 14th place on the grid for the race itself. Also going off, Luca Badoa, he damaged the right rear rim on one of the curbs, and in fact that brought out the red flags because they couldn't move his car out of the way soon enough. Michael Schumacher getting out of his car, pleased with his performance, fastest again in this session, but his time from Friday still staying as the fastest time. The dying moments of the session, once the red flag had been withdrawn, allowed Gerhard Berger to go out for one last chance. And in fact, the stewards reckoned he'd done too many laps. They appealed against that, and his time was allowed to stand, but it wasn't going to improve on Michael Schumacher, taking the 100th pole for Renault.
I believe it's very important. Every number like that, you know, under pole position is quite amazing, and it was good for Renault. You know, Renault doing a lot for us, and I'm very happy for our team and for Renault to have this under position.
So the classification seeing Schumacher on pole ahead of Damon Hill and David Coulthard, with Berger and Alesi 4th and 5th, Johnny Herbert in 6th position. Looking on further down the list, and a little disappointment once again for Tyrrell's down in 15th and 16th places. Bertrand Gachot found himself 20th, even with a cone stuck under his front wing as a result of going off at the new chicane at the end of the qualifying session. Welcome back to our review of the Canadian Grand Prix, and on to race day. The main talking point then was the weather. The warm-up had occurred in very wet and rainy conditions and had seen Jean Alesi go fastest, ahead of Rubens Barrichello, Gerhard Berger and Michael Schumacher 4th. But as the cars lined up on the grid, it was slick tyres all round, dry track virtually, with damp patches around to catch people out as well. Michael Schumacher then on pole position, ready for the start of the 69-lap event. The lights changed to green. Not a great start from Marc Blundell further down the order as Schumacher took the lead. Blundell losing out to both Heinz-Harald Frentzen and Olivier Panis. And watch Eddie Irvine trying to go around the outside of Johnny Herbert. Doesn't quite make it. A little bit of contact between them, and that's where Barrichello got himself ahead of his teammate. Damon Hill in 2nd place, Coulthard in 3rd, but the battle between Herbert and Hakkinen at the end of the lap, virtually at the hairpin, saw contact between the two of them, and a wasted chance for both of them to score points. The two cars got locked together, and it was very difficult to separate them. Hakkinen and Herbert really just running out of space. A big disappointment for both drivers, who surely would have both been in a chance of scoring some points as the race turned out.
Well, not very much really, because I just went into the hairpin. I did all my change down, did all my braking, and I was literally more or less, I think, on the curb. And then I just saw the front of Mika's nose come in, and he just went straight in the side. And then, you know, that was it really. But it was silly because it was sort of the first laps. You know, the tyres aren't warm and everything else. And it was just sort of an unnecessary move.
Well, I braked too late in a hairpin in the first lap, and the circuit was a bit down. Then I locked the wheels and I started sliding, and I hit him against the chassis. And nothing what I could do about that except to stay behind and stay calm, but that's what it was basically.
The next step was Jean Alesi attacking Gerhard Berger, but watch David Coulthard. Coulthard losing it, under braking as he came under the bridge, getting a good view of the two Ferraris coming towards him. But the main thing was the Canadian Grand Prix was over for Coulthard. Michael Schumacher leading the race and already beginning to open up quite an advantage over Damon Hill, now in second place, with Jean Alesi locking it up under the brakes, but in third place ahead of teammate Gerhard Berger. Rubens Barrichello in fifth position and Eddie Irvine in sixth, the two Jordan Peugeots going strongly. Schumacher still, however, building the gap, and Damon Hill, meanwhile, coming under increasing pressure from Jean Alesi. Alesi beginning to look for the gap past the Williams Renault, and it certainly appeared as though the Williams was not handling to its normal high standard. Hill watching his mirrors, and Alesi on the attack coming into the hairpin and taking that second place from Hill. A nice move down the inside from Alesi, with now Gerhard Berger on the attack as well. Wasn't too much longer before Gerhard himself found a way past the Williams of Damon Hill, who was obviously struggling. Well, soon both Saubers were in trouble, both Heinz-Harald Frentzen and Jean-Christophe Bouillon going out of the race at about 1/3 distance. The Tyrrells were one of the few teams on a two-stop policy, so they made their first stop around about lap 19. This is Ukio Katayama taking on board the fuel. He would be coming in later in the race at around lap 40. Michael Schumacher, however, was continuing, as were most of the leaders. It soon became clear they were on a one-stop policy. Jean Alesi, the first of the leaders to come in on lap number 33. Damon Hill came in on the very same lap, and a similar performance from the two crews. Rubens Barrichello also in on that lap from fifth position. One lap later, Gerhard Berger coming in. It was one lap too late. The Ferrari running out of fuel. He had to coast back into the pits and lost an awful amount of time as he got into the pit and was refueled to come back out again. Berger coming out, dropping down the order. Schumacher leading from Alesi and Hill. Berger rejoined in 8th position behind Martin Brundle. Michael Schumacher managed to leave it until lap 38. That's 4 laps more than anybody else before he came in to make his pit stop. Obviously, with the setup on the Benetton and Schumacher's driving, they were able to get good fuel economy, and it meant with less fuel being used, then he could run a little lighter in the latter part of the race. 12.9 second stop as well, a remarkably fast stop from Schumacher, who continued in the lead and continued to build that lead. Berger was chasing down Brundle, but suddenly Damon Hill was in trouble. Lap number 50, and the Williams coasting to a halt with more hydraulic problems. A repeat of the problems we've seen earlier in the year. Damon Hill was totally unimpressed. But that was not the end of the drama. A few laps later, lap number 57, Michael Schumacher, our race leader, suddenly slowing down and being passed by that battle for what had been 7th place. Martin Brundle and Gerhard Berger going past Schumacher. Schumacher stuck in 3rd gear, the engine on the rev limiter. Eventually he managed to get back into the pits, and they went for a quick steering wheel change. Indeed, it was an electrical problem that affected the gear change. The gear change operated by paddles just behind the steering wheel, and the change of steering wheel had the desired effect. Schumacher was able to come back out of the pits and would then go on to set some of the fastest laps in the race. He came back out in 7th position and had a fair bit of work to do to get back into the points. But all that meant that the new race leader was none other than Jean Alesi. In his 91st Grand Prix, never having won a Grand Prix, having spent most of his time with Ferrari, could this be his chance? Meanwhile, the other Ferrari was getting into trouble with Martin Brundle. Gerhard Berger clouting the back of the Ligier and punching them both out of the running. We spoke to both drivers afterwards to get their version of events.
Well, I mean, there's two sort of experienced professional drivers fighting hard. I mean, I placed my car carefully going into... He was quicker under braking and I was quicker in traction. And we had must have been a good 20-lap scrap. Quite where he came from when he ran into the back of me, I don't know, because he disappeared out of my mirrors. And the next thing is he sort of arrived out of control, sort of in the air, I think.
Yeah, I had a tough battle, and then I crashed with him, but it was my mistake.
So Berger owning up to that one, but Jean Alesi still continuing to the lead. Could it be possibly his first ever victory? The laps continued to count down, and Jean Alesi remained at the head of the field and was indeed going on to his first ever win. Behind him, the two Jordan Peugeots were also having their best ever performance. Up into second place, Rubens Barrichello, and in third place, Eddie Irvine. Both struggling a bit on fuel, and Irvine particularly marginal on the amount of fuel that he had at the end of the race, but it didn't matter. He made it across the line, and the two Jordans would be having their best ever results.
Not much. Yeah, it's very, 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 very good. You know, not just for me, but for Jordan. With Eddie, there was a fantastic moment. Number 27 with John was, you know, very nice for him to be there. So it was a fantastic podium.
It's good. We've a lot of work to do, though. You know, we're still not on the pace, and we're nowhere near it. So that's disappointing, but it's good reward for the team, you know, because we've been very unlucky up until now, and today we were lucky, but I think that evens it out over the year.
It's a good day, sure, fantastic. Fantastic for everybody in the team, because we've been through some difficult times recently, and I was getting a little bit impatient about where we were going, and we had a very good test 2 weeks ago, and because the previous tests have been a little bit difficult, I said I don't want to get too excited, because we tried some new things in the car. And we came here and we were 6th and 8th the first day, but fell away yesterday a little bit. So I was a little bit nervous, because I wasn't sure if the progress was real progress.
And while the accident to Martin Brundle and Gerhard Berger had removed one Ligier from a top 6 finishing position, Olivier Panis finished in 4th position, his second best ever result after that second position at Hockenheim in 1994. A consistent run all the way through the race for the Frenchman. Well, it's great for the team and for myself as well. It's a shame for Martin, but that's all part of the game. I'm very happy for the team, which works very hard every day, both in the factory and on the track. And I think we're going to progress in the points. I'm also very happy for Jean for his first win. And before the French Grand Prix, to have a win is great. Or Cesare Fiorio saying, well, I think it's a good ending to my time spent with Ligier. We've put the team amongst the best in the world, up to a level of around 5th or 6th place. Just one more race, and then I'll be going back to Italy. Michael Schumacher managing to claim back 2 points on his run to the checkered flag and setting the fastest lap of the race on the way. It would be the fastest lap, in fact, by over a second. And a great result for Gianni Morbidelli as well. His first point of the year in 6th place. It was a very difficult race. We were suffering with brake problems all weekend. And it's a very hard track on brakes, and we just couldn't get it solved for the race. And after my pit stop on my second set of tyres, I had a problem with the tyres. The car was feeling very strange indeed. Well, I had to put up with that. I managed to keep my position and stay in the points. Well, there's still stories that he may be replaced by Pedro Lamy, but a good performance from Morbidelli and his teammate Taki Inoue, recording his first ever finish as well. But the main celebrations are, of course, were with the Ferrari camp and with Jean Alesi. An absolutely tremendous result, and the man was just deliriously happy at the end of it. His 91st Grand Prix, his 31st birthday, all the statistics coming out, but at the end of the day, the important thing, Alesi had won. The first Frenchman to win a race since Alain Prost last won a Grand Prix, and that's certainly for all French fans a great boost just before the French Grand Prix. Michael Schumacher stopping to give Jean Alesi a lift back at the end and providing us with some tremendous pictures as well. So Alesi, the man who won the 1989 Formula 3000 title and becomes the first ever winner of a Formula 3000 race to go on and win a Grand Prix. A superb performance, and after 5.5 years spent in Formula 1, about time. It was very difficult for me. I understood that Schumacher was no longer in the running for a win and that there was no one else who could catch me. I started crying and it was very difficult because I couldn't see the road. I had too many tears in my eyes. I told myself to keep control or I could lose it. I regained my concentration, then I was in contact with the pits to check my fuel consumption because I know I was really on the limit. So the celebrations after the race and the birthday cake being shared around. John Alesi finally scoring that key victory. Well, there are a number of circumstances which led to the win. It was the first time for me, and I want to dedicate this victory to all those who have stood behind me. And of course to those who have been there through the hardest times, and as well my family. For the French Grand Prix, I'm sure that I'll have a lot of support. And a car which will allow me to do the same thing as today. So in the final order of things then, John Alesi taking the 10 points for the win. Second place going to Rubens Barrichello, third to Eddie Irvine, then Olivier Panis, Michael Schumacher and Gianni Morbidelli, the final point scorers. Luca Badoa, Mika Salo and Taki Inoue, the final finishers of the race, and that fastest lap going to Michael Schumacher. In the championship, it means that Schumacher now has 36 points. That's a 7-point lead over Damon Hill on 29, with John Alesi now third in the championship on 24, and Ferrari now have the lead in the constructors with 41 points to Benetton on 38. John Alesi, the man of the moment in Canada, will leave you with a musical celebration. And until next time from Ben Edwards, goodbye.